Before the wedding, my fiancée went abroad to find her first love. So, I turned around and publicly announced my own first love on social media. My friends were shocked since everyone knew how much I adored Nancy. I even worked hard to bring about the marriage opportunity between the two families. Once back, Nancy mocked me, asking what stunt I was pulling now. I simply hugged my first love and looked at her with unfamiliar eyes, asking, "Who are you?" On the day John went abroad, I was bombarded with insults on social media. His fans on Weibo fiercely attacked me, claiming their brother was forced to leave his career in China due to threats. They said I was the villain, the heir to a big company, who threatened him. After all, the day our marriage news was announced, Nancy appeared publicly, holding John's arm at a charity gala. Their behavior was intimate. When questioned by reporters about the marriage, she remained silent with a cold smirk, offering no respect at all. The rumor mill started churning immediately, with some so-called neutral observers claiming I used business ties to coerce Nancy's family into marriage just to marry her. They also suggested that my jealousy over her past with John led me to retaliate. The rumors got so bad even my friends thought my love for Nancy was unrequited. In truth, the marriage proposal came from Nancy's parents. I didn't have any part in it. I hesitated but eventually picked up the phone and called Nancy. Took a while for her to answer. Her voice was impatient. "What now?" I hesitated and said, "Where are you? We need to talk." Nancy clicked her tongue. "We're not married yet. Why do you think you can control me?" I faintly heard airport announcements through the phone. "Are you at the airport? Where are you going?" Her tone was full of irritation and disdain. "I'll go wherever I please. It's none of your business. What did I do to upset you so much that you'd go along with a marriage proposal just to coerce me with the company?" Nancy scoffed, "You're the one who wanted to break up back then." I paused. Back in college, I genuinely liked Nancy. Took a lot of effort to win her over. But soon after, John showed up. He didn't hesitate to mock me, saying Nancy wasn't truly into me. He even said if he beckoned, Nancy would leave me. Whenever I subtly hinted that Nancy should distance herself from John, she brushed it off, saying they were just friends and told me not to be so petty. These discussions always turned into arguments. Sometime later, the college forum got filled with posts mocking me as Nancy's loyal puppy. From a campus heartthrob, I became the subject of gossip and laughter. Eventually, I decided to end things with Nancy. When I broke up with her, she was quiet for a long time before biting her lip and saying, "Fine, Calvin, if you break up with me, then don't ever come back." I didn't reach out to her again. Little did I know, 5 years later, our parents picked Nancy as a prospective marital match. And Nancy misunderstood, thinking I threatened to marry her. Regarding the marriage, I tried to explain but got cut off. "Don't worry," Nancy sneered. "I don't like you, but I won't abandon the company either. Calvin, you want the title of husband? I'll give you that, but don't expect anything else." The next day, photos of John and Nancy shopping abroad surfaced. Nancy carried luxury shopping bags, looking happy, while John held her hand, their fingers intertwined. There was a picture where they were close, seemingly about to kiss. The photographer casually posted it on social media, captioning it, "Spotted an attractive couple abroad. So sweet." The post quickly gained attention. "Isn't that John? And the woman beside him is Nancy? Calvin's got some major issues now, doesn't he? Sure, he's got money and influence, but Nancy still prefers John. Our John's got charm that no one can resist." People exclaimed how well matched John and Nancy seemed. Some even dug up our college forum history. Oh my God, Calvin apparently used his position as a department head in college to make things hard for John. I vaguely remembered that time. John didn't fulfill his duties within our department. At the end of the year, I didn't nominate him for the Outstanding Member Award, which seemed to anger him. He complained, saying he needed it for his scholarship. But he never acknowledged his lack of commitment. Nancy witnessed this and urged me to give John the award since there weren't many available. I firmly refused, emphasizing how unfair it would be to others who worked diligently. Nancy disagreed, arguing not everyone needed it as desperately as John. I didn't relent, stating if he needed it, he should have shown effort all along. Nancy, for the first time, argued back, calling me heartless. Later, she added John's name to her project, and he got his scholarship. Now, this tale resurfaced but was twisted out of context. Calvin was petty and denied John an award just because John was close to Nancy, some claimed. John was a scholarship-dependent, struggling student. If not for Nancy, he'd have missed tuition. The uproar from this revelation triggered fan outrage. They started doxing me, uncovering all my social media accounts, even my lesser-known ones. My pet videos were flooded with hateful comments. That cat is unlucky to be with someone like you. How can you be so corrupt? Why don't you just go die? The direct messages were brutal. Some even sent black and white photos of my whole family. Hope your entire family goes to hell. Days of online hate left me feeling down. Then came flu season and I got a high fever. With my head spinning, I kept calling Nancy from home, hoping she'd step up and explain things. This involved my family. I couldn't just sit back. The fever left me disoriented and achy all over. One call after another, I lost count. No one picked up. The hateful words online echoed in my mind, and regret took hold. Why did I agree to this engagement? What did I ever see in someone like Nancy? Over and over, I dialed Nancy's number, ready to call off the engagement the moment she answered. But the phone kept ringing. No answer. In a daze, I misdialed and called a different number by accident. "Why are you calling me?" a soft female voice asked. When I came to, I was in a hospital room. There was a beautiful woman standing by my bed. "How are you feeling?" Her voice was cool but caring. Seeing her face, excitement filled my eyes. "Amy, you're finally back." The person I was holding stiffened up. "Calvin?" Holding her, I couldn't stop talking. "I had a fever and couldn't reach you. We're getting married in a month. Where were you?" After I said this, Amy paused and was silent for a moment. "Who am I?" Confused, I asked. "You're Amy, my fiancée. What are you saying?" Amy's eyes widened, a blush on her cheeks. "Unbelievable," I said. "What do you mean? Are you backing out?" Amy's eyes flashed. "Haven't you always liked?" Without letting her finish, I interrupted coldly. "Amy, we're getting married in a month. Are you trying to back out now?" We stared at each other. She pressed the call button by the bed. "Doctor, please come. I think the patient has some memory issues." My parents arrived after the hospital diagnosis. The doctor said I had temporary memory issues from the fever. Physically, I was all right, but who knows when my memory would return. Mom and Dad stepped out to talk to the doctor, leaving Amy and me alone. I tugged on Amy's sleeve, bewildered. Did I really mess up my memory? But I clearly remember us getting married next month. Amy's breathing got a bit erratic as she gripped my hand tight. "Calvin, you heard the doctor. I like you and am willing to marry you. But after your memory comes back and you realize you're marrying me, will you regret it?" I interrupted. "I won't regret it. I'm an adult. I'll own my choices." Amy seemed stunned. "But I won't force you into anything unwillingly." I hugged my knees, feeling a bit down. "If I got it wrong, forget it. My memory's messed up. You're not obligated to marry me." The next moment, she held my hand. Amy met my gaze, gripping my fingers. "Let's get married." Her breathing quickened, her whole face flushed. "Next month it is." I was discharged soon after. But my family was tight-lipped about the past, not saying much. Even my phone was lost somewhere when Amy brought me to the hospital. When I announced our wedding next month, my parents agreed without much fuss. With the wedding day approaching, preparations were underway. I dragged Amy around, checking out wedding bands, dresses, and decorations. After we picked the rings, I sneakily snapped a photo of Amy and posted it online. We picked out rings. Someone's taste isn't as good as mine. I expected some nice comments. Instead, my comment section blew up. "Huh? Am I seeing this right? Did Nancy get some work done? Looks good, though. Are you blind? That's Amy." Still confused, a buddy of mine bombarded me with messages. "Did you dump Nancy?" I typed a reply. "Who's Nancy?" Before I hit send, Ken dropped a pin to a bar. Same place tomorrow. Drinks on me. Let's chat. The next afternoon, I went to the spot. Just as I sat down, some guy I didn't know came over. Calvin, why the sudden engagement to Amy? Didn't you always like Nancy? You caved over a bit of online drama? Before I could respond, Ken returned with drinks and overheard. Why bring that up? I've told you before, Calvin isn't someone to string along, which is exactly what Nancy is. Say it again and we're done being friends. The guy awkwardly shut up. Things got awkward, and I couldn't help asking, what are you guys talking about? I've always liked Amy. Even if it was an arranged thing, our families are close. No room for anyone else. After I said it, the room went silent. Everyone was looking past me. I turned and saw someone looking upset. No idea why, but I sensed anger from this person. Calvin, I was gone for a few days and you say stuff like this? Just a few photos can set you off like this? Haven't you grown up at all? The woman's face darkened. You like Amy? Huh? Fine, cancel the engagement. Go to Amy. I wondered who this person was but was too busy getting mad at the outburst. Which rock did you crawl out of? Of course, it's Amy I'm with. Who else would it be, if not my future wife? If your mind's messed up, get it fixed. Why pick fights? No mirror at home? Ever heard of water reflections? Take a look. You don't hold a candle to Amy's toe. I started ranting at the woman, and her face just got darker and darker. With disbelief in her eyes, she said, Calvin, is this your new trick? I'm warning you, don't push it too far. Someone behind me tugged at my shirt and whispered, Calvin, what are you doing? This is Nancy we're talking about. Haven't you always liked her? Nancy? That's a name that kept cropping up over and over again. I pointed at myself. I like her? Images of Amy, my parents, and their odd reactions popped into my head. Did I used to like someone like her? I've told you many times, Calvin, I'm okay with the arranged marriage, but I'll never like you, Nancy said with a mocking tone. Looking at her, all I felt was disdain. If I liked you before, I must have been blind. I like Amy now. Get as far away from me as you can. You. Nancy looked really pissed and grabbed my wrist. What are you up to now? Then, someone stepped between us, and the cool voice of Amy sounded in my ear. Stay away from him. When Amy showed up, I took her hand. Seeing this, Nancy looked even worse. Calvin, do you think by doing this I'll fall for you again? Trying to make me jealous with Amy? Don't forget you already tried this trick before. Without that piece of memory, I was clueless, but I felt Amy stiffen. I had a bad feeling that this might be true. Seeing Amy's reaction, Nancy went from being angry to calm. With a sneer, she said, Amy, rushing over whenever Calvin calls. Such a loyal dog. How did it feel watching us date in college? I noticed Amy start to tremble. She replied coldly to Nancy, what goes on between us doesn't need your commentary. All you need to know is he doesn't want to see you now. Nancy snorted and looked at me. Calvin, this is your last chance. Leave with me, and the wedding will still be on in a month. I won't hold today against you. Or Nancy glanced at Amy, the smile vanishing from her face. Keep being stubborn, and the engagement's off, no matter how much you threaten. You choose. She made it sound like she was giving me a choice, but her eyes said she was sure I'd let go of Amy's hand and leave with her. Even Amy's look was like she knew I wouldn't choose her. Everyone seemed to think I'd pick Nancy. I was silent. Was I really that bad before? Nancy saw my silence and, looking more sarcastic than ever, even reached out a hand towards me. Amy's grip on my hand loosened, her eyes full of disappointment. Smack. A crisp sound rang out in the air as Nancy held her cheek, disbelief written all over her face. Are you crazy? I held Amy close, ruffling her hair. This girl must be nuts. Honey, let's go home. Ignore her. Since I got out of the hospital, Amy and I hadn't been this close. Calling her honey seemed to make her tense up. And on the other side, Nancy looked shocked. Sure, let's go home. Amy turned and snuggled into my arms. Ken was the first to play along, acting surprised, not married yet, and you're all over each other. Don't go overboard, you guys. Most of the other friends caught on and joined in the teasing, but not Nancy. She stood in the corner, looking sullen. As Amy and I left, she stared hard at me, like she was trying to see through me. A few days later, Nancy suddenly announced that she's with John. Everyone was in an uproar. Fans freaking out over this couple is one thing, but Nancy announcing it herself was another ballgame. With her being basically a princess, dating someone from her own roster was explosive news. People were guessing all sorts of things, mainly why Calvin wasn't making a fuss. But actually, Nancy's parents were already sitting in my living room. Nancy's mom put on a brave face. "In-laws, this was our daughter's mistake. We've already scolded her." She took my hand warmly. "Calvin, you're the only one in my eyes fit to be Nancy's husband and our son-in-law. John is just an insignificant actor. We can't let her marry him." I calmly pulled my hand back, despite my jumbled memories, staying cool. "No need, ma'am. Let's just call off the engagement. It's not like it's the feudal era. Who cares about social standing anymore? I think Nancy and John are a good match. A trashy girl and a dog, made for each other, right?" The smile froze on Nancy's mom's face, but she kept trying. "Calvin, I know you've liked Nancy since college. You broke up with her and she's acting out. Just say a couple of nice things to her, and she'll drop John in a heartbeat." I found it laughable. Sweet talk her? She really thinks our family's desperate to join with theirs? My mom finally put an end to the conversation. "I think we're done here. Our family doesn't lack for matches. We only agreed because Calvin seemed interested in Nancy. We misunderstood. Parents shouldn't make decisions for their children. Honestly, Calvin is marrying Amy next month. They've been close since they were little, always had strong feelings for each other. Nancy's a good kid, but she should find someone else." With it said, there wasn't much else she could argue. I'd had enough, so I went to the garden for a smoke. Unintentionally, I overheard Nancy's mom on the phone. "You ungrateful brat, driving me mad. It's like you have no brains. You agreed to the engagement, and now you're with some pretty boy? Calvin and Amy are getting married next month. There's nothing to discuss." "Don't call me mom." The person across seemed to be saying a lot, but she had no patience for it and scoffed. "Do you think everyone will pamper you like your dad? I'm done dealing with you." After hanging up, she met my gaze while I was having a smoke. There was a flicker of awkwardness on her face, and she sighed. "Sorry, Calvin. Nancy says one thing but means another and has poor judgment. But as a mother, I have to say Nancy really likes you. Is there really no chance for you two?" She looked at me hopefully. I just shook my head. "Auntie, what's the point? Amy and I are doing well, and Nancy doesn't even like me. Forcing people together through marriage is pointless." She was silent for a moment, sighed, nodded, and left. My phone buzzed with a message from Amy, asking which restaurant I wanted for our weekend date. I smiled and forwarded her the newest one I'd found. Amy responded with an okay emoji, indicating she'd arrange it. My gloom lifted, and I walked back inside with a bounce in my step. Bad memories are best forgotten. At first, Nancy and John's matter made a big fuss. But overnight, all the news got yanked, as if it never happened. Curious netizens were left wondering, but John, usually a Twitter chatterbox, suddenly went silent. I surfed online, caught a glimpse, then moved on. The wedding was near, and Amy and I were both super busy. A week later, I went for a follow-up appointment. Amy wanted to come with me, but knowing her hectic work schedule, I said I'd be fine on my own. After picking up my diagnosis, as I was heading downstairs, I ran into Nancy standing alone in the lobby. She looked up when she saw me, noticeable dark circles under her eyes. I pretended not to notice and planned to leave directly. "Calvin." Nancy seemed to have had enough of me ignoring her. I turned around, frowning. "Whatever you want to say, spit it out." Nancy's forehead twitched, seemingly unused to my tone. "The marriage issue." She kept her lips tight, not saying a word. Just as my patience was about to run out, a man's voice came from behind. "Nancy, who are you talking to?" John, holding a bag with a mask on, only showed his eyes. Seeing me, his eyes darkened, but he quickly composed himself. "Oh, Calvin, it's been a while." "Hello, Senior," he said, tugging on Nancy's arm. I've seen the doctor, let's go. However, Nancy stood still, looking at me. John's expression stiffened, but he forced a smile. I get it. Nancy just got back. It's normal for you two to catch up. He jutted his chin out, acting magnanimous. I'll be waiting over there. I looked between John and Nancy. You two really? Nancy's breathing hitched. And if I say it's true? I nodded. You two make a great pair, wishing you happiness. Just remember to give me 2 wedding red envelopes. Leaving those words, I turned to leave. But then, Nancy gripped my wrist, anger tinging her voice. Years passed, you still won't listen to my explanation. Why are you so calm usually? But with John, you're always suspicious. I rolled my eyes, classic line. Even with amnesia, I know if you think something's fishy, it usually is. I know myself well enough not to unjustly accuse anyone. I pulled my hand back. Do I really know you? We're that close? John cut in, Calvin, please stop fighting with Nancy. Everything wrong are my faults. Don't blame Nancy. I smirked. This guy's good at playing innocent. Of course, it's your fault. John's smile froze. But your methods suck. Blame my past self for being dumb. I glanced at Nancy, stating coolly, kindly step aside. I need to get home for my fiancé's cooking. Nancy's attention darted elsewhere. You're living together? She looked incredulous. I raised an eyebrow. We're getting married next month. Why's living together a big deal? Nancy gritted her teeth and tried to pull my arm. We need to talk. In the scuffle, my diagnosis slipped from my hand, landing at her feet. Nancy frowned, picking it up, face going stiff. After a while, she looked up, bewildered. Calvin, what's this? Amnesia? Nancy stared hard at the diagnosis sheet, as if trying to burn through it. Impossible. How could you just forget? Her voice trailed off, but the medical report doesn't lie. Notice her realization. I dropped the act. Yeah, I don't remember, and I don't know you. Now give me back the diagnosis. I have to go home. I reached for it, but Nancy hid it behind her with a stern face. If you have amnesia, then why agree to marry Amy? I replied plainly, because I remember Amy. You remember her, but claim not to know me? Nancy looked dark, questioning. Calvin, do you think I'll believe that? I let out a short laugh. Believe what you want. Keep the diagnosis. I don't need it. Ignoring Nancy, I turned to go. As I left, I heard John's voice. Nancy, can we head back? Nancy snapped, go yourself if you've got legs. Then she shouted after me, Calvin, I'll check if this diagnosis is fake. Don't play games with me. I rolled my eyes inside. A few days later, just outside of work, I saw an unfamiliar car parked. Nancy stepped out, looking serious. Is it true you have amnesia? I barely frowned. What's it to you? She seemed not to notice my resistance. Come with me. She stubbornly tried to grab my hand. I dodged her reaching hand and snapped. Why should I go with you? That place might help you remember something from your past. I was skeptical. What place could be that magical? My phone buzzed. I unlocked it to see a message from Amy. Off work yet? I ignored Nancy and focused on replying. Yep. What delicious thing did you make today? Without realizing it, Nancy came over and saw the message on my phone. Her face fell. Calvin, are you sure you like Amy? You're so scared of getting your memory back. Do you really want to blindly marry Amy? Nancy looked unwilling. I talked to a doctor. You need to stimulate your brain. If you go to that place with me, maybe you'll remember something. I turned off my phone and looked her in the eyes. I'll go. An hour later, I drove with Nancy to Zhang University, my alma mater. Walking around the campus, Nancy kept telling stories relentlessly. Remember this place? The track field, we used to come here a lot when we first started dating. This cafeteria, window 2 sweet and sour pork, was your favorite. Finally, we stopped by the basketball court. It wasn't dark yet, and many students were playing on the court. Suddenly, there was a commotion, and a ball came flying right at me. Look out! Nancy noticed the ball and shouted a warning. Just as I was about to dodge, someone gave me a light push, and I smelled a fresh soap scent. When I came to, I locked eyes with Amy. Why did you come here with her? Didn't you say you were coming home for dinner? I opened my mouth to explain, but a sharp pain hit my head. My legs went weak, and Amy caught me just in time. Calvin, in a daze, Amy helped me to the car, pushing away Nancy, who tried to intervene. Are you okay? Drink some water. I'll take you to the hospital right now. Amy panicked. I grasped her hand weakly. Wait, hold on. I think I'm starting to remember. Nancy's haphazard plan surprisingly worked. While walking on campus, bits and pieces of memories began flashing in my mind. The near-hit basketball was the last trigger. I realized why Nancy brought me to the basketball court. This basketball court is where we first met. But I also remembered the arguments, misunderstandings, the mess, and how heartbroken I was saying the words, "Let's break up," and the remorse and hatred during that high-fever night. On the way back, I stayed silent. The surge of memories overwhelmed me. Amy was silent too. Back home, I noticed a fully laid dinner table. But the food had gone cold from sitting too long. "I'll throw it away later," Amy said in a low voice. "No, heat it up. I can still eat it," I said quickly. Amy looked up, and I saw her eyes were a bit red. "Sorry. I'm really sorry for keeping things from you. The wedding is in a week. If we cancel it now, we still have time." "Wait." I rubbed my forehead, hearing Amy's words. "Why cancel? You got your memory back, right?" Amy bit her lip. "If you want to find Nancy, I won't stop you." "Nancy?" I scoffed. "I'm gonna find her, all right?" To settle the score. The next day, I barged into the entertainment company she owned. The receptionist's face changed when she heard who I was, awkwardly asking me to wait. Nancy came running, a pleased look on her face. "You came for me? Did you remember something?" I nodded. "Yeah, I remembered. I've got a score to settle. Get John out here." I timed it right, knowing John was in the office. Before losing my memory, I was under heavy online attack and ill. A mess. He got off easy for too long. Nancy hesitated. "There's really nothing between me and her. Don't be mad. Those photos, I had them taken. John played along with me. I was just mad about the breakup." I laughed at this. "Nancy, don't tell me you think I'm jealous because I like you?" Her face froze at my anger. "Fine, I'll get John for you." John arrived, calm and collected. "What brings you here, senior?" He didn't get a chance to finish before I punched him. "What the hell? Are you nuts?" I shook my hand, a smile devoid of humor. Had I not lost my memory, I'd have done this sooner. "You should have never involved my family when you slandered me online." John was stunned, not expecting my attack. "You hit me?" I sneered. "Damn right I did. You hired a mob to spread lies about me bullying you in college, remember? Well, I'm here to bully you now. What do you have to say?" John glared at Nancy beside him. She just stood there frowning. "Calvin, is this true?" "I didn't do anything." John tried to sound confident. "Nancy, you know me, right?" Nancy looked at me, uncertain. "Calvin, are you sure there's not a misunderstanding?" I chuckled. Turning to John, "You thought your actions were flawless?" His face stiffened, forcing a smile. "What are you talking about?" I waved my phone, showing him the screen. John's name splashed all over the top 3 trending topics. "John, disgusting." The first headline. With trembling hands, he clicked in. The top post was a tweet by a random girl. "I'm exposing the dirty star John for seducing a minor and being a wealthy cougar's toy. And he got busted by her husband, beaten half to death. She even posted plenty of video evidence to bury him." After regaining my memory, I'd logged back into my old Twitter account. Seeing all those nasty DMs and slander doesn't even faze me anymore. Among all the DMs, a message from a girl caught my attention. She told me about John's wrongdoings and said the victim is her friend. But she's been scared to report him because Nancy Entertainment is so huge. Now, seeing me getting trashed, she's willing to expose John as long as I protect her identity. As I was leaving, Nancy quietly apologized. She said, "I'm sorry. I had no idea he did those things or that he'd hire people to smear you." Calmly, I said, "It's not important anymore." "But it is." Nancy pleaded, "Let's get back together, Calvin. You remember how it was, right? All those misunderstandings. You liked me, I liked you." I shook my head. "It's been 5 years, Nancy. I've moved on. The idea of marrying into her family was my folks' idea. They assumed I liked her and never asked me. I compromised because I thought, why not? I laughed a little. Who I marry really doesn't matter to me. Nancy bit her lip and looked desperate. If it doesn't matter, then cancel the wedding with Amy and marry me. I looked at her and smiled. I used to have a thing for you, but now I think I'm genuinely into Amy. When I got home, the place was pitch black. I thought no one was there. But when I turned the lights on, I saw Amy sitting on the couch, surrounded by empty bottles. I was surprised. She looked up drunk with a pouty face. You didn't come home all day. Have you abandoned me? I comforted her. I told you yesterday I had things to do today. I'm back now, aren't I? Amy wrapped her arms around my waist, nuzzling against me. You can't like Nancy anymore. Just me. Drunk Amy was so childish. Normally, she'd never say stuff like this. Maybe because she hides her feelings so well, I never realized she liked me. I closed my eyes, thinking back on everything. I even dragged Amy along for advice on what gifts girls like, using her to win over Nancy. Amy took me to great restaurants, and I'd tell her I'd bring Nancy there next. I can't believe how much that must have hurt. And I didn't even notice. I hugged Amy, stroking her back. Never again. I'll only like you from now on. Hearing this, Amy let go and batted her eyes. Really? I smiled and nodded. I'm not lying. Then suddenly something warm and sweet with a hint of alcohol touched my lips. Amy was kissing me. Her grip was so tight, I could barely breathe. At the peak of it, I felt my cheek get wet. Amy was crying. Who knows how long it went on before we finally pulled apart. I scooped her up off the couch and took her to the bedroom. The next morning, Amy was still curled up in my arms, fast asleep. I kissed her forehead and got up carefully to head to work. As soon as I reached the office, my phone rang. Ken's excited voice came through the line. Dude, did you check the trending topics yesterday? Even more people are spilling the tea today. Turns out, John wasn't from a poor family at all but a middle-class one. Yet he still took scholarship spots meant for needy students. Plus, he was pretty shady with your college advisor and took the merit scholarship away from others. It's all out there now. As I listened to Ken, I opened Twitter to see for myself. Today's headlines were even juicier than yesterday's. And since it involved minors, the police took John in for questioning. His fans were trying to paint him as the victim, but no one believed them against solid evidence. Then they started blaming John's company for not doing anything. But within half a day, the entertainment company released a statement saying their contract with John, the disgraced artist, ended this month and won't be renewed. Still, Nancy's company couldn't avoid the fallout. John's behind-the-scenes stunts of paying folks to spread lies and defame others were exposed too, and I was one of his targets. Now that John's reputation is trashed, brands have canceled their deals with him, leaving him facing huge penalties. He got what he deserved, and I've got no interest in making it tougher for him. Plus, my wedding with Amy is just around the corner. On the big day, I put on my carefully chosen suit. My parents and Amy's parents were all smiles, watching us stand in front of them. Amy's mom was so happy. I've always hoped you'd be my son-in-law, Calvin. And here we are. Amy was red as a tomato, Mom. Amy's mom grinned. Why? Did I force you? Remember when you were little, always wanting Calvin to be your hubby, and sulking if he didn't play along? I squeezed Amy's fingers, leaning in to tease. Who knew you've been plotting since way back then? Huh? Amy's face turned even redder, and she looked away. I was laughing so hard I could barely stand straight. The wedding hadn't officially started yet. Amy went to touch up her makeup, and I was waiting for her backstage. Out of nowhere, Nancy came up to me. Seeing her, I frowned. What are you doing here? The guest seating's not this way. Nancy looked at me with a bitter expression. So, you're really marrying Amy. Calvin, come with me, will you? I've kicked John out of the company, and I'm done with him. Nancy lowered her eyes. I didn't see it before, and that's why we broke up over a misunderstanding. I'll make it all up to you. Can you give me another chance? I sighed. Her persistence was starting to get on my nerves. Just as I was about to speak, a cold voice came from behind. He can't. I turned around to meet Amy's eyes. Amy stood protectively in front of me, looking at Nancy. Nancy, what are you trying to prove here? Amy's eyes were full of determination. Nancy looked at Amy with resentment. How long have you two been together? How do you know you won't make the same mistake I did? Amy let out a cold laugh. I'm sure I won't. Takes a fool to misjudge, and I'll always choose to trust Calvin. Nancy's face darkened. You. Enough. I stepped in front of Amy. Nancy, this is the last time I'm saying this. During the fights we had, I hated and felt disappointed. But the minute I decided to break up, it meant our relationship was over in my heart. I've never felt regretful. I don't dwell on the past, nor the people or things in it. You don't need to apologize because I no longer care. I looked at Amy. Now, I found someone I love and care about again. Nancy, let's leave each other with some dignity. Okay? Nancy stared into my eyes, motionless. After a moment, her gaze faded, and she turned to leave. The wedding march filled the banquet hall as pink petals gently floated down. In the center of the hall, surrounded by family and friends, the priest solemnly recited the wedding vows. I placed the ring on Amy's finger, my eyes soft and tender. I do. Amy smiled. I do too. Fireworks burst as we embraced and kissed amidst the cheers and applause.